Good morning, it's 7 o'clock. You're watching the only breakfast show live from Westminster. Two big stories this morning. The latest on Tiger Woods after his car crash. We're live at the hospital. Plus a new plan to help school children catch up over the summer. But any more news on exams? We'll be asking the Education Secretary in a few moments' time. Also this morning, we're going to be putting your questions on the vaccine rollout to England's Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Jonathan Van Tam. He joins us at 9 o'clock for 30 minutes of your questions. And Charles Darwin's treasures. We explore what's been unearthed at 9:15. It's Wednesday, the 24th of February. Lucky to be alive. New details of Tiger Woods' injuries are revealed following his car crash in Los Angeles.
I've seen fatal traffic collisions, so I will say that it's very fortunate that Mr. Woods was able to come out of this alive.
No quick fixes, a warning as new plans to help school children catch up over summer are revealed. And a Sky News special investigation into football academies and what happens to the young players who don't make the cut.
I was taking days off work because I was absolutely convinced that that was the day he was going to take his life.
DIY smear tests, the cervical screening trial for tens of thousands of women that hopes to tackle delays during the pandemic.
And as we head into the weekend, high-pressure builds allowing for mostly fine and dry conditions. But today, there is the risk of flooding with some rather persistent downpours of rain. I have the details for you later.
Good morning. Police say he's lucky to be alive. The first full details of Tiger Woods' injuries have been revealed in the last hour following his car crash in Los Angeles. In just a moment, we'll be live at the hospital where the golfer has undergone emergency surgery and is now awake and responsive. Our US correspondent Cordelia Lynch reports.
This is the car that golfing legend Tiger Woods had to be pulled from in Los Angeles just after 7 o'clock yesterday morning. It rolled several times after careering off the road and landing on a grassy verge. The 45-year-old was driving alone when the vehicle flipped. This is audio of the dispatch call.
Hey, ma'am, do we have an ETA for fire? We have a rollover with someone trapped.
The man first on the scene said Tiger Woods was conscious, lucid and calm and extremely lucky to have survived.
I have seen many collisions. The nature of his vehicle, the fact that he was wearing a seatbelt, I would say that it greatly increased the likelihood that it saved his life. I will say that it's very fortunate that Mr. Woods was able to come out of this alive.
He'd only just undergone his 5th back surgery and wasn't playing competitively while he recovered. But he'd been in California to host the Genesis Invitational Golf Tournament and spent time with other sports stars.
How good am I, or how bad am I?
Good.
I'm not good. I'm sorry for using that.
We're getting better.
22 years on from the first green jacket comes the 5th.
Woods achieved one of the greatest comebacks in sporting history in 2019, winning the Masters. He'd been hoping to compete again this year. This recent huge setback left friends deeply unsettled.
I mean, I'm sick to my stomach. You know, it hurts to see one of your, now my closest friends, you know, get in an accident. And man, I just hope he's all right. Just worry for his kids, you know, I'm sure they're struggling.
The LA County Sheriff says there was no evidence Tiger Woods was impaired at the time of this crash, and he's currently being treated at Harbor UCLA Medical Center. The former world #1, who made it back to the top against the odds, now has another fight on his hands. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Washington.
Well, let's talk now to our correspondent, Sally Lockwood. She joins us now from the medical centre in Los Angeles. And Sally, what's the latest we know about Tiger Woods' condition?
Well, Tiger Woods was brought here because his injuries appeared so serious, and this is a trauma centre. But it's a relief to hear an update from his team on his official Twitter account that he is awake and responsive and recovering in his hospital room. A little more detail for you. They wrote in the statement he's undergone a long surgical procedure on his lower right leg and ankle after being brought to the hospital. Open fractures affecting both the upper and lower portions of the tibia and fibula. Bones were stabilised by inserting a rod into the tibia. Additional injuries to the bones of the foot and ankle were stabilised with a combination of screws and pins. Now, as we've heard, Tiger Woods was very lucky to survive this incident, according to emergency responders who attended at the scene. But, of course, the Masters is around 6 weeks away, and the big question was whether he was going to make it. Of course, after 5 operations on his back, that was already looking unlikely. It's now, of course, very unlikely indeed that he will make that tournament after that incredible comeback in 2019. The stuff of a film, many are describing it. But his supporters and fans are very, very happy to hear that he is OK, making a recovery. And, of course, as many say, never underestimate Tiger Woods for making a comeback.
Yeah, big relief for many that he is hopefully on the road to that recovery. Sally, thank you very much for the update. And there's a new plan to help school children catch up over the summer, but education leaders are warning that there are no quick fixes to so much disrupted education. Well, let's get more on this. We're joined now by the Education Secretary Gavin Williamson. Thank you for being on the programme. Can you just talk us through what to expect from this announcement? What exactly should parents be expecting?
Well, this is an added boost to education and to children. We recognise that all children have missed out on so much over the last year, and that's why just 6 months ago we announced the £1 billion catch-up fund. But on top of that, we're putting an extra £700 million into this. This will see extra money, £200 million going to secondary schools to roll out summer lessons and summer camps, if that's what the route they want to do, expansion of our national tutoring programme, so we can really target resources to those children who need it most, to give them that extra boost to help them catch up on some of the classroom time that they've missed. But we've got to recognise...
You talked there about the most disadvantaged children and it being targeted at them, but some people are going to be wondering if this is enough. I mean, 10 years of progress between closing the gap between the most disadvantaged and more privileged peers has been wiped out, according to the Education Endowment Fund. This apparently works out at about £6,000 per primary school. Is it enough? Should you not be looking at more drastic measures like lengthening school days or shortening the school holiday?
So we're looking at a whole sort of range of different actions, but what we wanted to do is to give schools the extra resources that they needed to be able to take action immediately. Some of the reforms that we want to look at and sort of consult on will sort of look at the whole expanse of what we can do in terms of helping children have extra teaching time, have extra opportunities. But this is an immediate response to give those children that extra boost. But the best support we can do is seeing children back into the classroom on the 8th of March, which is, I think, something that all parents want to see, all children want to see, and teachers want to see as well.
So just to pick up there, you're saying you're consulting on a whole range of things about extending teaching time. Does that mean you are looking at extending the school day?
Well, we recently appointed Sir Kevin Collins in order to be able to look at how we do education recovery, a man who's had so many years of experience. And we're looking at a whole range, a broad range of different options of how we can support schools, how we can support teachers, but most importantly, how we can support children. And that's a whole range
including lengthening the school day?
He will be looking at how we can boost and support children in a whole range of different manners. But it's not just about time in school. It's about supporting teachers in terms of the quality of teaching and how we can help them.
OK, sounds like it is on the table, though. I just want to ask about the timing of this announcement as well, this extra top-up money. Children have experienced right now 338 days of disrupted education since they were closed in that first lockdown. And I just wonder if this feeds into, a wider theme. If you effectively just doing things too late at the last minute, after they've already become obvious? I mean, you announced more laptops for schools, for example, back in April. Many still don't have them now. You announced at the beginning of January that exams were going to be cancelled without announcing a plan of what was going to replace them. I mean, are you basically, the essay crisis education secretary? You only do things right at the last minute and you leave other people to pick up the pieces.
So what we announced is a £1 billion fund in terms of boosting children's education, giving them extra help and support, and schools that extra help and support over 6 months ago. This is extra action that we're taking because actually children have suffered more disruption as a result of that. We always recognise that the best form of assessment for children was through exams. But when we're in a situation where we had to lock down schools again and we weren't being able to welcome children into schools, we did have to take another route. We've made it clear that that's through teacher judgment and teacher assessment as to how those grades will be awarded. And our focus is very much in terms of welcoming children back on the 8th of March. It's an incredibly important part of our unlocking the country. But it's also goes to confirm the priority that the Prime Minister and I have always said. The national priority is our children and their education. We've always said schools would be the last to close and first to open, and we've been absolutely true to our word.
So what is your plan then to replace exams? You say that you recognise it's the best form of teacher assessment. How are you going to replace them?
Well, what we already set out in sort of the first week of January is the fact that we'd be putting teacher judgment at the core of it. It would be teacher-assessed grades that would be what is the basis of GCSEs and A-levels. We're in the next few days going to be outlining the details, further details of the plan following the consultation that we carried out with the sector that had one of the largest responses that of any consultation that we've ever run.
I understand, you need to consult, you need to get this right because it's so important. But what I don't understand is when exams were cancelled last year, when it was entirely predictable that they could be cancelled again this year, why didn't you announce a comprehensive plan at the same time as announcing that they were going to be cancelled? It would really help parents and children as well, and the anxiety levels.
Well, as you'll probably recall, back in January, we did set out very clearly that we're moving to teacher judgment in terms of assessment and grades.
But no detail about how they were going to be moderated.
And we absolutely rightly wanted to consult on this. We'll be setting out the details incredibly shortly in the next few days, and you'll have to sort of just wait a short time longer before we set out more details on that. But the best form of assessment has always been examination. That's why we had felt that the best route, as many other countries right around the world, even while they've been dealing with the pandemic, had also reached that same conclusion. But in terms of a changing situation, we felt it was right to be able to consult on a different route and sort of set out our contingency plans in terms of doing that. That's what we did. We completed the consultation and we'll be informing both children, teachers and parents of the result of that incredibly soon.
Contingency plan, does that mean people could still sit exams then?
No.
OK. I'm interested to hear about universities as well. They're not included, they weren't included in the roadmap this week. Can you guarantee to university students that they're going to get some face-to-face teaching by the end of this academic year?
Well, I do apologise to correct you, but they were actually included as part of a roadmap. And actually what you're seeing is from the 8th of March, you'll be seeing all practical students being able to return. That's roughly about 40% of all students studying at university. So a very significant increase in the number of students that are going to be going back to university. I equally recognise that there's many more students that are not covered in that. That's why, as part of the next stage, there is a review about when we can bring students back into university at the earliest possible moment. That is the right time to do so. I certainly want to be seeing students back into the university at the earliest possible moment. That's why we're conducting a review, and that's why we're going to be welcoming so many back on the 8th of March.
Yeah, as you say, the majority of students, we're still not clear when they're going to return. Can you guarantee that all university students will have some face-to-face teaching this academic year?
Yeah, we want to be seeing all students, whatever courses that they're doing, to be having face-to-face teaching this year. That's why we're setting out the review point of the next stage of the roadmap as to when we're going to be able to make it absolutely clear that all students are going to be able to return back to university.
OK. Now, James Wharton, the former Conservative MP, someone you know very well, obviously, because you both worked together on Boris Johnson's leadership campaign. He's been appointed the head of the independent regulator for higher education in England. Can you just talk me through what experience he's got in that sector? Because, I mean, I've had a look, I can't really find any.
Well, James brings an immense amount of experience, both as a government minister, as a lawyer before entering Parliament, but also as a chairman of a business and bringing business experience as well as public service experience into that role. And what he will be is an incredibly strong voice and champion for students as well as the sector, making sure that we drive up standards in the sector, making sure that we drive up the quality of what students get from universities and helping, the sector deliver real change in terms of what they deliver in terms of a student experience. And I think we need to have strong advocates in organisations such as the Office for Students that are absolutely rightly there to hold universities to account. And I have no doubt that he will do exactly that as he did in his ministerial career.
Well, I'm glad that you've got no doubt, because other people have got some doubts on this. He's been given this very lucrative role, £60,000 a year for 2 days a week in the university sector. When I asked what relevant experience in that sector you've got, you said he's been a minister and a lawyer. I mean, you can understand why some people might think, hang on a minute, is this just jobs for the boys?
Well, actually, so many of these incredibly important public appointments is making sure that you have strong advocates for the sector, making sure that you have strong voices for students. That is what Lord Wharton will be, and I have no doubt that he will take the enthusiasm and the passion that he always had, whether as a DFID minister, whether as a Minister for the Northern Powerhouse, into that exact same role in terms of advocating for universities and advocating for students, making sure that we drive a quality agenda in terms of making sure that teaching within universities continues to improve. These are all things that are absolutely vital that the Office for Students does. And this follows an extensive independent sort of recruitment process, and one where he was also interviewed by the Select Committee in Parliament, which also endorsed his appointment as well.
Very quickly, because we are out of time, but this comes off the back of other people who are known to this government being awarded lucrative contracts. For example, a neighbour of Matt Hancock getting £30 million to produce vials for COVID tests. Are we really meant to believe that this is all just complete coincidence that they have relationships with members of government and they were really appointed because they were the best people for the job?
We always appoint the people who are best person for the job, driving the government's agenda in terms of change and reform, whether that's in universities, whether that's in schools, whether that's in any other sector of society, because actually we want to deliver change, we want to deliver the levelling up agenda. That's always the focus, and our focus is getting the best people into those jobs to deliver that change and help us deliver the agenda that we were elected to deliver back in 2019.
OK, Gavin Williamson, thank you very much for being on the programme. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's bring in our political correspondent, Tom Rayner. A couple of things to pick up on the interview. I thought it was quite interesting that he didn't rule out lengthening the school day. It felt to me that was something that was on the table to try and help children catch up.
I think what's really notable about the announcement this morning is that we are seeing more money, but the reaction from the education sector has been, well, this is promising, but we need a lot more. And it seems that what they're trying to get at is it's not just about more money. They obviously want that, but it's also a plan. And there hasn't really come with this announcement a plan of what exactly schools are expected to do with this money. There's talk of lessons in the summer, but no actual specific instruction as to whether that should be teachers from the school itself, whether it's external agencies, how that's going to work, how it's going to be organised, whether schools are required to do that. And so when you were asking about the specifics, it's clear that as things stand, the Education Secretary has this being worked on by Sir Kevin Collins, and he certainly didn't rule out things like extending the school day or shortening the holidays. But for now, that's all still something where there's a big question mark over it, and that is going to lead head teachers and parents and children into a situation where there's still uncertain as to how things are going to progress.
Yeah, you can really see that uncertainty starting to affect people. And Tom, thank you very much for the analysis. Thank you very much. Reminder, we're going to have a special vaccines Q&A programme with the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Professor Jonathan Van Tam. That's at 9 o'clock, so do join us for that. Still to come on the show at 7:45, I'm going to be speaking to the former teacher and writer at the Times Education Supplement, Graham Hallinan, about plans to help kids get back up to speed. The hotel quarantine experience at 7:25, we're going to be speaking to a couple nearing the end of their 10-day isolation in Heathrow Hotel. Plus, in the next hour, hopes for a green light for driving tests in April. We'll speak to the Chief Executive of the RED Driving School about the backlog of tests and lessons. Well, time now for a look at the morning's other main stories. The Duke of Edinburgh remains in hospital this morning after being admitted last week with an infection. But his son, Prince Edward, has told our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills that his father is a lot better, just a little bit bored.
I did speak to him the other day, so he's a lot better, thank you very much indeed, and he's looking forward to getting out, which is the most positive thing. So we keep our fingers crossed.
Sense frustration at being in hospital?
Just a bit. I think that gets to all of us. So so yeah, you can only watch the clock so many times, and you know, the walls are only so interesting.
The number of female top bosses in Britain's biggest firms has risen sharply in recent years, but more progress is needed. That's according to a report from the Hampton-Alexander Review, which revealed the number of women on FTSE boards has jumped by 50% in 5 years. That means around a third of FTSE 350 board roles are now held by women. Tens of thousands of women will be able to take smear tests at home for the first time as part of a trial. It's hoped the move will encourage more people to take the test and cut the number of cervical cancer cases. Well, Enda Brady has more for us. And Enda, you can see why they want to do this. I would imagine that the number of smear tests may have fallen during the pandemic. But is there a worry about people missing serious, cancer?
Yeah, I think that's the reason behind this. The tests are going to be posted out in the coming days and weeks to 31,000 women in the following areas. So London boroughs of Barnet, Camden, Islington, Newham and Tower Hamlets, and they will be sending them to women aged 25 to 64, and these are primarily women who are 15 months overdue a smear test, a check. So they'll be posted out. The women will then send their samples back and they will be contacted with their results. So 31,000 home tests in total. It's the first time ever this has been trialled in the NHS in England, and I noticed this morning that the Eve Appeal, which is one of the prominent gynecological cancer charities in the country, they say this is potentially a game changer. So very, very interesting development indeed.
OK, Enda, thank you very much for the update. Thank you. Now, if you've been working from home, you might be able to get away with a looser dress code, but not if you are an MP.
No, I don't think we do go to Stoke-on-Trent. The honourable gentleman has to be dressed as if he were here in the chamber. So we will not go to Stoke-on-Trent. We will try to come back to Mr. Gullis in due course.
Bit of a ticking off there from the Deputy Speaker, Dame Eleanor Lang, who actually refused to talk to Conservative MP Jonathan Goulis for not wearing a suit jacket. MPs are expected to wear usual business dress. A tie, though, is not mandatory. They don't go that far. Mr Goulis was allowed to contribute after he put on a jacket a few minutes later. Now, in the last few moments, the Education Secretary Gavin Williamson told the programme that the government is considering a broad range of options when it asked him directly if school days could be lengthened to help students catch up on missed learning. It comes as the government announces funding to help secondary schools run summer lessons to make up for time away from the classroom. I also pressed Mr Williamson on whether a longer school day is in the offing.
We're looking at a whole range, a broad range of different options of how we can support schools, how we can support teachers, but most importantly, how we can support children.
Including,
that's a whole range
including lengthening the school day?
He will be looking at how we can boost and support children in a whole range of different manners. But it's not just about time in school. It's about supporting teachers in terms of the quality of teaching and how we can help them.
Gavin Williamson speaking to me a little bit earlier. Now, the travel and aviation sectors have been among the hardest hit by the coronavirus pandemic. They were, of course, those among those listening carefully on Monday as the Prime Minister detailed the steps that England would take to lift lockdown restrictions. Well, joining us now to discuss that is Owain Jones, the Managing Director of Wizz Air UK. Thank you so much for being with us. I imagine that you, like everyone else in the country, was listening very closely to the Prime Minister's statements on easing lockdown restrictions. It didn't seem like there was a clear message to me on summer holidays, though. How worried are you?
Yes, very much. We've been anticipating the roadmap for some weeks now, and particularly how it's going to affect aviation and travel. As you say, we have some of the strictest travel restrictions in Europe currently in place in the UK. But what we were asking for was a roadmap out. Now, we believe the government has to take a risk-based approach. We need to look at what the risks are and how we can safely get people travelling again. I think from our perspective, what we did get was some clarity, at least as far as England is concerned, that we don't need to expect to plan for any travel, at least before the 17th of May, which at least gave a little bit of clarity for the industry to start its planning process.
We've heard stories about domestic holidays getting booked up pretty rapidly. What's it been like for the airline industry? Are people actually booking tickets, or is it just not happening at the minute?
It has been a quiet booking period, certainly during 2021 so far, because people have been unsure about whether or not they're going to be able to travel. Now, that glimmer of hope that we've had, that international travel is on the agenda, which we are very thankful for, and that not before date of the 17th of May, it certainly has got people interested. So we, like other airlines, have seen considerable uptick in bookings compared to the last few weeks for the travel period from, say, June onwards. People, I think, are planning ahead and taking the view that, given what's been announced by the Prime Minister, the likelihood is that they are going to be able to travel.
You said there's been an uptick in bookings. Have you got any numbers to give us a bit of perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we've seen lots of figures being thrown out there, the hundreds of percent. So we're starting from a pretty low base. But no, I mean, in terms of where we've been at in the last week to compare where we've been just the last 2 days. So, it's not a big data set, but certainly, we're 2 or 3 times what we were seeing this time last week.
OK, you were saying that it's been a quiet period, that it's starting from a low base. Of course, that's no secret. We know that. How have things been at Wizz Air? Have you had to make redundancies? How difficult has it been?
Well, I think what we've done at Wizz Air is we've been very agile in the way we dealt with the pandemic. We did have a round of redundancies a year ago, not actually that many redundancies in the UK. But as a company, as we go into summer 2021, we're actually going as a bigger company than we were this time last year. We'll be 40% bigger in the UK going into the summer. We're creating around about 300 new jobs, flying 60 new routes, opening 3 new bases. And more broadly across the network in Europe, we've taken 17 brand new aircraft in the last 12 months. That's about $1.5 billion at list prices. We've opened 15 new bases and added around about 260 new routes. So for us, we've been agile. We've scaled up very quickly when we've been able to, and that demand has been there. But equally, we've had the agility to scale back down and keep our costs under control when more stringent restrictions have come in.
Of course, it's a very difficult time for the industry as a whole. Are we going to see other operators going bust, do you think?
I think it has been a tough year, and yes, we've seen some casualties. What we focused on, and the industry needs to focus on, is its cost. We went into the crisis as one of the most financially resilient carriers in Europe, and we're going to come out of the crisis in the same position. And that's because we've been very tight on managing our cost and how we've operated our routes during the last year. So we focused very much only on operating where there's demand, and we can do that in a way which brings cash into the business.
OK. I'm interested to get your take on the hotel quarantine system as well. We'll be talking to a couple in a minute who are stuck in a hotel, approaching the end of their 10-day quarantine period. How much of an issue is it? And while that quarantine exists, are we really going to see people actually booking flights?
Yes, and I think this is where people are looking ahead. So at the moment, as I say, we have some of the strictest travel restrictions, quarantine restrictions of anywhere in Europe. Now, the government's doing that for public health reasons. It's basing it on the data, it's basing it on the science. What we're urging the government to do, and what we want to do with the government, along with all the other airlines in the UK, is look at the risk that we're addressing when we restart international travel. So hotel quarantine there, yes, it's there for a reason at the moment. What we want to do is to work with the government to look at why it's there, and as we expand international travel, as quarantine may become less essential, as we see vaccination programs accelerating, not just here in the UK, which has been a fantastic effort, but across Europe, how we can address that risk in a way which then allows people to start travelling again.
OK, thank you very much for being on the programme, Owain Jones of Wizz Air. Thank you. Well, let's get a bit of a sense about what it's really like to be experiencing that hotel quarantine, because today marks 10 days since the hotel quarantine policy was introduced. That means the first travellers from 33 so-called red list countries have had to stay in a hotel after arriving in the UK will be released from today. Now, Elaine and Wagner Araujo returned from Brazil last Tuesday after visiting to attend to family business. They join us now from their hotel at Heathrow. Good to see you. Good to see you're still holding hands after being stuck in a hotel together for so long. How has it been?
Oh. It's a good time for us to enjoy ourselves and talk about our relationship and care about our families. But it's been a good time. We decided to use this opportunity in our favor.
And Elaine, how long exactly have you been in the hotel for now?
8 days. So we're gonna come out on Friday, unfortunately, because we thought it would be on Thursday, but the hotel just communicate with us and saying that we must leave after 6 a.m. on Friday.
And what do you spend your days doing? I mean, that's my big question. I guess, like, you're in a room the whole time, is that right? And then you get room service. Can you actually leave the room at all?
Yeah, we have to arrange. Excuse me. We have to arrange an appointment with the concierge to come out. And then the security will come and knock at doors and take us to walk. But we left the room just once. We spent almost the time inside the room. All the time. All the time, actually. And then we play cards. We watch TV. We do exercise. PlayStation and stuff, watch movies and, talking too much. So, yeah, what we're doing at the moment.
It sounds like you're, coping pretty well with all these activities that you're managing to cram in. I mean, a lot of people listening will probably think, stuck in a hotel room with your partner for 8 days, you must have had a few rows as well, or has it been okay?
Yeah.
Well, for a long time it's crazy, but we try to enjoy this time, try to use this time as our favor, as I said, and get enjoyable. I know it's hard, 10 days. If you don't do different things, we're going to be crazy here.
Yeah, I can imagine. You must be really good at PlayStation by now.
I learned how to do it.
And how has it had an impact on you financially, or did you factor in the fact you were going to have 10 days in this hotel after your holiday anyway?
Well, we are trying to avoid to pay this amount of money. Try to come earlier, but as you couldn't, we nothing I can do. You just need to pay for it. No? Rules is a rule. You need to live by the rules. Yeah, but it's gonna be a little impact on our financial. We're gonna survive at this. We're gonna get through this.
Okay, well done for coping so well. I hope you've still got enough pants to get you through the last couple of days. Thanks so much for coming on the programme and explaining just what it's like being trapped inside that hotel. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now on to Other news, the prize for young players who make the grade to join the footballing elite is a lavish lifestyle and the promise of fame on potentially a global scale. But now Sky News reports on the fate of the thousands of young footballers in club academies up and down the country who face rejection at a really vulnerable age, left with little emotional support and no guidance on what to do with the rest of their lives. Here's our sports correspondent, Martha Kellner.
It's the career which so many youngsters dream of. At any time, around 12,000 boys and young men are in football's youth development system. Fewer than 1% will ever make it to the professional ranks. A Sky News investigation has spoken to many of those spat out by the system. One became a Class A drug dealer, another flirted with gang life. They claim the academy setup is broken, leaving those rejected to deal with the emotional fallout. Ashley was released from Fulham Academy at 19.
I went home and I waited for the football club to contact me and help me, and the help didn't come. By the time I was able to look into it myself and try to forge out something for myself, it was too late. A lot of football clubs weren't taking on players anymore, and that sent me into a wild depression.
I honestly don't know how we got through it. Sorry. I found myself every single day before I went to work going into my son's room to check he was breathing. I was taking days off work because I was absolutely convinced that that was the day he was going to take his life.
Fulham say they're investigating Ashley's claims but have so far found nothing to support them. The club say they've contacted him on numerous occasions but are yet to receive a response. Jeremy Whiston shared the dream of becoming a footballer. The 18-year-old was found hanged in his bedroom last October. He was, his parents say, devastated after being released from Manchester City Academy. Jeremy's death has prompted soul-searching in football. Ali plays for Swansea under-23s and is on the fringes of the first team. It's rare to hear a youngster still in the system deliver a critical analysis. But Ali's moral fibre runs deep, particularly when it concerns Jeremy's death.
He was actually on trial at Swansea a few months before that. So on the day I found out about that, I get goosebumps now just talking about it. It was just stretching on the mat, and then you look at your phone and see somebody's took their own life. And straight away, you can relate to that in the weirdest way possible, because that might sound, it's not in a suicidal way, but you can relate to them feelings that person was going through because you've been through them as well.
Charlton Academy has a rich heritage of bringing through youngsters. Here they pride themselves on their education programme, running regular player care sessions, focusing on preparing their players to cope in the event that football doesn't become a career.
There's always going to be some sort of emotional fallout when a player leaves a club. It's inevitable, especially if you've got a boy that's been with you for so long. Some of these lads that I've known since they were 8, 9 years of age, which is why it's absolutely incumbent upon us again to make sure that we engage with that mental, emotional well-being, personal development piece when we can, when they're here.
But with each club allowed to register up to 250 youngsters in their academy and such a tiny number making it to the top, it's arithmetic which only makes sense to the multi-billion-pound business of football. Martha Kellner, Sky News.
Education. We're joined now by Owain Jones, a former teacher and senior content writer at the Times Educational Supplement. Thank you so much for being with us. We just heard from Gavin Williamson, the Education Secretary, who didn't rule out measures like lengthening the school day or shortening the holidays to try and help children catch up. Do you think that would be a good idea?
Well, at the moment, what we've heard so far is just stage one. So we're really in the triage process, because what we need to do is wait for the children to come back, see what their performance is like, see where the gaps actually are, and then we can decide whether things like extending the school day, adjusting the school terms, more serious interventions are necessary. What needs to happen first is for the children to return, get a sense of normality back again, see what we need to do, and then make a decision.
And how do you think that return is going to go? The government wants to do all schools to all pupils on the 8th of March. I mean, is the testing capacity going to be in place to do that?
So the testing is going to be particularly difficult. Before secondary school students can start their face-to-face teaching, they've got to have a negative result on their lateral flow test. And this means getting all of the students in and testing them in a very short amount of time. So that 8th of March start date is quite unlikely for the secondary school students because we're going to need time to get them all tested first. And then after that first test, lessons can start, and we need 2 more tests at school, which will be more difficult, more challenge for schools to do. And then after that, then the students can start testing at home, which should be much easier.
I mean, we're always reassured, aren't we, that the testing capacity's gone up, but it's hard not to forget what happened last September when, universities went back, when schools went back, and the whole system was completely overwhelmed. Are you worried that a similar thing might happen?
I think the key difference between what's happening now and what happened in September is that we had that summer of everything being relaxed. We had lots and lots of mixing. We had students returning after being abroad, whereas this time we're going back after quite a serious lockdown. So we're hoping that perhaps the problems that we had in the autumn might not be quite as bad, won't be repeated again. We've also got the fact that in secondary schools, all students will be wearing masks during lessons, and we're hopeful that this might help reduce transmission too. However, the really serious things that we know does help stop transmission in schools, like ventilation, smaller class sizes, that's not been put in place. And we still know that teachers aren't going to be prioritised for the vaccinations. So although we're hopeful that things might be a bit better, I think we're still feeling quite cautious about what will actually happen when the students go back.
Yeah, just to pick up on teacher vaccination, the government's saying that, look, they're just following the advice of the JCVI, the independent experts. But at the same time, say there's around 500,000 teachers in England. We're doing around 300 or 400 tests, vaccinations a day. It'd just take a couple of days, wouldn't it, for teachers to get their jabs?
It does feel like that, doesn't it? It seems that it would be quite an easy thing to do. We've had school mats offer up their buildings to be like these super centres where teachers can go and get vaccinated. We wonder, is this an admin problem? Is it because it would be too difficult to vaccinate teachers, to try and get people to prove that to evidence that they're teachers to get the vaccination, so it's quicker just to go through the country by age? I don't know, but we do know that being vaccinated reduces transmission. We've seen that from the reports from Israel. So the justification before for not vaccinating teachers was that we don't know if it reduces transmission. It seems that now we do. So we don't understand why they're not being vaccinated.
I just want to ask you a little bit more about the attainment gap, the progress that's been lost over the last year. And I know it's very hard to really calculate it. The Education Endowment Foundation said that they think a decade of progress closing that gap between the more disadvantaged and the more privileged pupils could be wiped out. How bad do you think the situation is?
I think it's very difficult to make a broad statement about what it's like for all students because we've all had such different experiences during lockdown. And although, yes, we can see that from the statistics that less advantaged students have been engaging with their online work less, that doesn't necessarily mean that when they come back into the classroom, they'll be further behind because, of course, parents might be doing different sorts of work with their children at home. The simple answer is we just don't know yet, and we're not going to know until the children are back and we've got assessments being taken place in school. We might not really know the full picture until years to come.
And we've, of course, got this announcement from the government today, a bit more money to help schools really, I guess, deal with some of the issues that you were just talking with. Is that welcome?
Obviously, we welcome the money. It's a little bit underwhelming at this stage because it's not quite as when you think how much it costs to run a school, it pales in comparison. But this is just stage one, and it sounds as if there's more to come. We know that Sir Kevin Collins is prioritising not just the academic development of students, but also their social and mental health. And it's important that we see these measures as part of a larger package that's going to take place over a number of years. One of the concerns that we're hearing, Sir Jeff Barton said that he sees it as a salami slice. The money's being carved up so much that it might reduce its effectiveness. What we'd actually like to see is that schools can have control over the money and not have it earmarked for very specific things, to allow them to use their own knowledge about their context to spend the money in the most effective way.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned mental health there as well, because it does feel like we talk a lot about the academic impact, but of course there's going to be a big mental health aspect to it too. Thank you so much for coming on the programme, sharing a bit of your expertise with us this morning.